Right, I'd like to, without further ado, introduce the next speaker, who is me. Sorry, we haven't had the talk yet, so might not be any claps after that. Anyway, the bad news is there aren't that many slides, so I thought I'd do some backgrounders into Oculus Rift and just VR in general. It's something, being an old guy, that I've been exposed to for the last 30 years, I guess, in one shape or form or another. Oculus Rift has really struck a note with me, being the first technology that, as far as I'm concerned, that actually sort of delivers roughly what I thought VR should be about, you know, when it was first released, and then it was a bit of an anticlimax. Anyway, so yeah, the early days of VR. I guess there'll be a few of us in the audience who remember these times where we all bundled down the arcade, partied with our hard-earned money for a game, sort of a go in the new VR systems, only to be underwhelmed with Harrier jump jet type simulations, a very small screen that sort of floats around in front of you, and you don't get any feeling of immersion and so forth. So, yeah, having watched things like The Lawnmower Man, that's kind of what I expected, and in reality, it fell far short of that. And we had these monstrous headsets that, you know, you'd have a neck like Jeff Capes after using one for a few hours. So it just wasn't really practical in the true sense. So what I call, and I just coined this one the other day, VR 2.0 in my view. This was really born about through Oculus Rift with Palmer Luckey, who was kind of like us guys. You know, he's frustrated that VR was about, it never really took off. There are some aspects of it used for military applications in things like the F-35s and various other things, but nothing really sort of reached the consumer level, largely due to price point and stuff like that. And people worried about how in the 90s the whole thing just collapsed on itself. So I guess it's about risk taken and so forth. So Palmer Luckey kind of thought, well, you know, can we do something with modern day technology, fairly rapid processors that are relatively cheap, video screens that are cheap. And he thought, well, okay, let's think about what we can get off the shelf. Let's put something together as a prototype, or certainly in terms of its design, and see what we can come up with. So he went away and did this. He bumped into a chap called John Carmack, who's well respected in the games and programming industry, who liked a lot of his early designs and added certain refinements in terms of the headset, added code that he'd done and ported it over to stuff which then gave further momentum from other people in the industry like Valve and so forth. So having got further than I think Palmer Luckey originally thought he would get, they took it to Kickstarter because they needed funding, and no VC capital would touch them at that point because they were that embryonic and high risk. So they went out to Kickstarter, as you probably saw. I wasn't an early investor at that point, but I did later on, hence the kit. And they raised 2.5 million to get them off the ground. So it's well oversubscribed, gave them lots of capital to move things onwards with. And out of that was sort of born DK1, which was the sort of first concept that we saw last year. If you'd have been around in June at Geek, we demonstrated that and had hands-on, which was a pretty cool piece of hardware. But it had certain sort of shortcomings, but it was generation 1, so that's great, it's to be expected. So Palmer Luckey was really a guy that, just more background, that really set out just to get something up and running. Like us geeks, it wasn't really interested about making money. He just wanted to get technology running with stuff off the shelf. Great. And you know, if it worked, it worked, and they got something more mediocre out of it, then fine. But we now obviously he's doing pretty well with the industry support and also the Facebook acquisition. Don't think he has to worry about a pension anymore. Anyways, the next generation Oculus Rift headset, which I'll be demoing tonight, codename Crystal Cove, was really what I viewed, and I was very impressed at DK1, even though that was obviously their first generation, it was a lot better when it first came out than I thought it was going to be. And anybody who'd used it probably saw the same thing. The balancing thing in the equation is getting the whole subsystem right as well, because what happens a lot with this technology is you have the head-mounted display, but the back-end subsystem and graphics cards and so forth just can't keep up with it. So you lose that illusion of virtual reality. So that's very much the whole sort of thing around this, it's balance. So anyway, DK2 was announced last year. It started shipping in July. I got mine in September. Plugged it into various bits of software, and it was pretty damn impressive. To the point where it left you a bit dizzy, nearly head-butted monitors, that sort of thing. So you had to be fairly careful with how you got used to the immersion. And you'll see that tonight when you play around with it. So first generation was pretty well spec'd displays, so 1080p in each eye. They're still a bit fuzzy, as you'll see. That the 100-degree tracking, or 100-degree field of view, initially seemed quite narrow, because again, in the films, they portray this wrap around, almost like, I don't know, 150 degrees or something. But 100 degrees actually works quite well, because as you rotate, it's very fluid. It may not be as fluid as it should be on a laptop, but it's pretty good. And you do get that immersion feeling after a bit, because you stop thinking about looking out the corner of your eye all the time. You just look ahead and let your head do the work. Response times are really important with the kit to maintain that illusion, because if you move your head and it's not moving in sync with your rotation, it really kills it. So even on this laptop, it works quite well. So they've shipped a bucket load of kits for development environment. You can imagine, I mean, I was pretty much out there and said, how much, just take my money. It doesn't really matter how much it is. They shipped 75,000 first generation and 75,000 second generation. So a lot of people would be happy about that for a release product. So it's pretty good numbers. So consumer version, which we are anticipating Q1 2016, I suspect that it's got to be at sort of Vegas in January at the Consumer Electronics Show. And I guess that'll be the official sort of launch, and when they give you times when it's in the shops and so forth. Pity they couldn't have made Christmas, but I guess they have their reasons. So slightly improved resolution as against 1920 by 1080, slight increments on those, the OLED displays, improvements in head tracking, although I think it's pretty good already, and they're adding some earphones. I currently use some Logitech headphones at home, and they give really good immersion. Although fiddling around for the keyboard is always a bit of an art. And also, Oculus Rift have been spending a lot of time on the whole sort of immersion controller thing, and that's a real issue I found at home when you're using the unit. You've got to still interact with the keyboard and mouse, and you're kind of like going like this, feeling around. Where's the up and down buttons, that sort of thing, and it's sort of one of those things. It's ongoing. So consumer version, it looks something like this. It's pretty cool. Should retail. I think the figures were about £200 when they actually finally come to market. So that's pretty aggressive pricing. So let's get into demo time. So I wanted to keep this bit short and let you guys, because a lot of people have a play with this stuff. If you give me a couple of minutes just to set up and then get some hands on. Thank you.